Predestination. The 2014 Spierig Brothers film is the cleanest cinematic test case for the Novikov self-consistency principle ever filmed. It's adapted from Robert Heinlein's 1959 short story All You Zombies, in which the protagonist becomes their own mother, father, and recruiter through a closed loop of time travel and gender transition. Russian physicist Igor Novikov formalized his self-consistency principle in the mid-1980s to address paradoxes in general relativity solutions that admit closed time-like curves. His claim is simple and brutal. Any event that would create a paradox has probability 0. The timeline self-corrects, and free will quietly leaves the equation. The film stages this exactly. Every choice the barkeep, Jane, and the unmarried mother make is the choice that closes the loop, never the choice that breaks it. The Fizzle Bomber reveal in the final act, where the agent's older self turns out to be the very terrorist he's been hunting, completes the paradox without violating internal consistency. Stephen Hawking's 1992 chronology protection conjecture cited Novikov's principle as one possible mechanism by which nature would prevent paradoxes if closed time-like curves existed. Most time travel films cheat the paradox. Predestination doesn't. That's why physics-leaning reviewers cite it more than any other time loop film. 12 Monkeys. Cole arrives in 1996 with one mission, and every move he makes turns out to be the move that already happened. Terry Gilliam's 1995 film is adapted from Chris Marker's 1962 short, La Jetée, and both works pin the protagonist to a single, self-causing loop. Cole's mission to identify the source of the 1996 plague never changes the past. His actions become the past. Dr. Catherine Rayleigh's Cassandra Complex lecture names the structure outright, the curse of foreknowledge with no power to alter outcomes. The childhood airport memory Cole carries is his own death witnessed as a child, the loop's terminal point. The film never names Novikov, but the structure is textbook self-consistency. It's the predestination paradox in cinema, and every viewer figures out the loop by the airport sequence. The film earns the loop without cheating. Looper. Rian Johnson built his 2012 Hitman thriller on a deliberately fuzzy time travel rule, and physicists noticed it lines up with the Novikov framework better than the script admits. Old Joe and Young Joe coexist in the same 2044. When Young Joe scars his arm, the scar appears on Old Joe in real time, implying a single, self-consistent timeline. Johnson has said in interviews he wanted time travel to feel messy. He instructed actors not to overthink the mechanics. Old Joe in the diner scene literally tells Young Joe, "It doesn't matter." The Rainmaker arc, where Sid's future depends on Young Joe's final choice, only resolves under a self-consistent reading. The closing, self-inflicted shot is the only act that severs the loop. Critics from CinemaBlend and the writer at QNTM have argued the film mixes single timeline and multiverse logic. Physicists who lean Novikov say the ending is the predestination paradox solution. Looper is the rare time loop film that looks broken on first viewing and tightens up only when you accept Novikov's self-consistency as the operating rule. That's why it polarizes physics audiences. Terminator. James Cameron's 1984 original is the bootstrap paradox in its purest dramatized form, a loop where the cause and the effect have nowhere to start. Skynet sends the T-800 back to kill Sarah Connor. The T-800's wreckage is recovered by Cyberdyne and reverse-engineered into the very chip that becomes Skynet, a beat that becomes explicit in Terminator 2 Judgment Day in 1991. The bootstrap paradox, also called an ontological paradox, is the standard textbook example used in philosophy of time. An object or piece of information has no first origin, and that's the whole problem. Philosopher David Lewis argued in his 1976 paper, The Paradoxes of Time Travel, that causal loops are logically permissible. Causation can be locally asymmetric but globally cyclic, without contradiction. Kip Thorne and his collaborators have shown that under general relativity with closed time-like curves, bootstrap-style loops involving billiard balls have non-zero probability of being physically realized. The Terminator is why the bootstrap paradox has its modern cultural footprint. Every later film that runs an information from the future loop, Looper notes, the Tenet algorithm, the interstellar quantum data, owes its grammar to this one. Quick note, if you're enjoying this so far, I make videos like this all the time. Subscribing would help out a lot. Thanks. Interstellar. Future humans build a tesseract so a man in the past can save his daughter, and the loop they create has no first cause anywhere inside it. Kip Thorne, the 2017 Nobel laureate for the LIGO gravitational wave detection, co-developed the project with producer Linda Obst. He served as executive producer and wrote a tie-in book, The Science of Interstellar, documenting where the film stays inside known physics. The Tesseract sequence is the film's bootstrap loop. Future humans, the they, build the Tesseract so Cooper can transmit Gargantua's quantum data to Murph, who uses that data to crack gravity manipulation, which is what allows future humans to exist in the first place. Cooper's bookshelf signal, the falling books, the Morse-coded watch, is information sent from the future that becomes the cause of itself. That's the textbook bootstrap structure. Thorne has publicly said wormhole-permitted closed time-like curves in general relativity could give bootstrap paradoxes real physical likelihood, citing the billiard ball thought experiment from his and Mike Morris's 1988 paper with Olvi Yurtsever. Physicists writing about the film, including Caltech's Sean Carroll, flagged the closed time-like curve at the heart of the third act as the same Morris-Thorne-Yurtsever wormhole class. Recognizable, not hand-wavy. The they in the film is deliberately left as a future humanity that has transcended four-dimensional constraints, Nolan's stand-in for the eternalist block universe view. Some physicists argue the gravity equation Murph solves required information that has no causal origin even in self-consistent closed time-like curve logic. Others say that's exactly what a closed loop is. Interstellar is the bootstrap paradox dressed in real general relativity mathematics. It's the rare blockbuster where the physics interpretation isn't a metaphor. It's the actual model the consultant believes might describe time travel if it's possible. Back to the Future. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale's 1985 trilogy looks like a single timeline film, but the franchise's own mechanics force a many worlds reading. The alternate 1985 in Back to the Future Part 2, with Biff's Casino Empire and a dead George McFly, only makes sense if Biff's Sports Almanac branched a new timeline rather than overwriting the prime one. Gale's IDW Comics canon, Untold Tales and Alternate Timelines, explicitly treats the trilogy as a multiverse with branching realities. The fading photograph mechanic in Part 1, where Marty's siblings disappear, only holds under a single timeline reading. Part 2 breaks this rule, forcing a hybrid model. Gale himself has given different answers across interviews about which version is canon. The franchise is the single most cited example in undergraduate philosophy classes when discussing the impossibility of single timeline time travel. Avengers Endgame. On a whiteboard at the Avengers compound, Tony Stark pronounces the name of a real working physicist and the title of a real 1991 paper. Stark's whiteboard line, "Quantum fluctuation messes with the Planck scale, which then triggers the Deutsch proposition," refers to David Deutsch's 1991 paper, Quantum Mechanics Near Closed Time-like Lines. Deutsch's framework combines closed time-like curves with the Everett many worlds interpretation. Time travel into the past creates a new branch rather than altering the original. The grandfather paradox dissolves because you're killing your grandfather in a different branch from the one you came from. Caltech theoretical physicist Sean Carroll served as a consultant on the film, and Carroll is one of the most public advocates of the many worlds interpretation in modern physics. The Ancient One's whiteboard scene with Hulk, the snap of the timeline diverging, is a literal visualization of Deutsch-style branching. Physicists writing for Newsweek and The Ringer in 2019 confirmed the math is drawn correctly. Hugh Everett III formalized the many worlds interpretation in his 1957 Princeton dissertation. Deutsch's 1991 paper extended it to time travel scenarios. Endgame is the highest-grossing film ever to embed a real, named, peer-reviewed physics paper into its plot mechanics. The rules track with what working many-worlds physicists actually believe. Source code. Duncan Jones's 2011 thriller starts as a simulation movie and ends as the cleanest parallel realities film of the 2010s. Jones told Gizmodo and NBC News in 2011 that the ending isn't a simulation. Coulter Stevens has actually transferred his consciousness into a parallel reality where the bombing was prevented, while the original timeline still has Stevens dying in the source code chamber. The source code device works by using the 8-minute residual electromagnetic memory of the deceased Sean Fentress, Jones's stated mechanic, not fan inference. Each iteration of the loop branches a separate reality under a many-worlds reading. Jones called it quantum manipulation rather than time travel. The ending text message Stevens sends, "Everything's going to be okay," is sent from a parallel reality back to the prime one, threading the two branches. Source code is one of the few films where the director publicly insisted on a many-worlds reading after release, foreclosing the simulation interpretation most viewers walked out with. Jones's whole point is that the simulation reading is the wrong one. Coherence. James Ward Burkett's 2013 dinner party thriller is Schrodinger's cat staged at the kitchen table. A passing comet, called Miller's Comet in the film, causes decoherence between quantum branches. That allows 8 different versions of the same dinner party to leak into each other. Burkett told Film Inquiry he spent months researching Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation before writing the script. The character Hugh, named for Hugh Everett, explicitly reads the relevant passage about Schrodinger's cat aloud during the film. The comet mechanic is metaphor, not physics. Quantum decoherence between macroscopic versions of a person isn't physically plausible at this scale. Coherence is the closest a low-budget indie has come to dramatizing the many worlds interpretation as lived experience. Primer. Shane Carruth made his 2004 film for $7,000 and built the most physically rigorous time travel rule set in cinema by accident. The time machine boxes work via a 6-hour loop-back mechanism. Carruth has stated in DVD commentary the design is inspired by Feynman diagrams, particle paths through spacetime. Each trip creates a new timeline branch under a many worlds reading. The original Aaron and Abe persist, while the time-traveling versions diverge into a separate world line. The failsafe machine, Abe's secret pre-activated box, branches a deeper recursion. Aaron's discovery of the failsafe creates a third nested timeline. He claims to have revisited the same Monday party 20 times. The physical degradation of travelers, the ear bleeds, the handwriting deterioration, was Carruth's invented in-world cost for branch divergence with no real physics analog. Primer is the consensus pick among working physicists when asked which sci-fi film handles time travel most carefully. The rules are punishingly internally consistent. The film is famously dense, and the Monday party recursion is the one example that captures how deep the rabbit hole goes. Donnie Darko. The entire film takes place inside an unstable parallel branch, and the rules come from a fake textbook the director wrote and published. The Philosophy of Time Travel, a fictional book by the in-universe character Roberta Sparrow, the woman the kids call Grandma Death, appears in the film's deleted scenes and the 2004 director's cut. Richard Kelly published the full text in supplementary material. The book defines a tangent universe, an unstable parallel branch that splits off from the primary universe and collapses within roughly 28 days unless the timeline is reset. Kelly has confirmed in the director's cut commentary that the entire film takes place inside a tangent universe. Donnie's death at the end resets the primary universe to its undisturbed state. The living receiver, Donnie, and the manipulated living, Frank and Gretchen, are roles defined in Sparrow's book and tracked one-to-one with the film's plot. The tangent universe model parses cleanly under a many worlds reading. Donnie Darko is the rare film where the director front-loaded the entire physics framework into a fake textbook, then dared the audience to read it. Decades later, fan communities still parse it line by line. Arrival. Denis Villeneuve's 2016 adaptation of Ted Chiang's Story of Your Life makes the block universe theory of time the literal mechanic of language. Block universe theory, also called eternalism, argues past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. Physicists from Einstein onward formalized this as a consequence of special relativity's relativity of simultaneity. Heptapod B is a written language that encodes an entire sentence at once, mirroring eternalist temporal awareness. Chang's stated source of inspiration is the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis crossed with block-time physics. Louise's memories of her daughter aren't flashbacks. They're flash-forwards she experiences as present. Arrival is the only mainstream film that treats eternalism not as a paradox to solve, but as a description of how time actually is, closer to Einstein's view than to most time travel cinema. Tenet. Christopher Nolan's 2020 spy film is the most ambitious cinematic attempt to dramatize entropy reversal as a real physics mechanism, and the consultant on the script was a Nobel laureate. Kip Thorne, the same physicist who guided Interstellar, read the Tenet screenplay and advised on the entropy inversion concept. Nolan told Esquire that Thorne helped him out with some of the concepts, while declining to defend the film as scientifically accurate. The film's central rule is that an inverted object has its entropy arrow reversed, so it experiences time backward relative to non-inverted observers. Bullets fly into guns, fires extinguish themselves. This maps onto a real concept, the thermodynamic arrow of time, defined by the second law, which physicists like Sean Carroll have argued is the only candidate for time's directionality at all. The algorithm, sent backward through time by future humans to undo our future, is a textbook bootstrap paradox structure layered onto the entropy mechanic. Closed time-like curves in general relativity were first proven possible by Kurt Gödel in his 1949 solution to Einstein's field equations. The Gödel metric describes a rotating universe where every observer has access to closed, time-like curves. The Tenet turnstile is a fictional analog. Nolan staged the climactic temporal pincer movement to physically illustrate two arrows of time meeting. Physics communicators have called it the most accurate cinematic visualization of closed, time-like curve topology to date. Physicists in the LA Times and Screen Rant in 2020 split on whether the entropy mechanic violates causality even by the film's own rules. Macroscopic entropy reversal of a single object inside a forward time environment has no physical analog. Thorne himself didn't claim it was realizable. Tenet is the closing argument for the entire genre, a film that takes the second law of thermodynamics, the most asymmetric law in physics, and asks what cinema would look like if you flipped it. Whether it succeeds or fails, it's the highest effort attempt at the question yet filmed. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you catch every new upload. Thanks for watching.